Being an influencer can be so hard. Just like everyone else on the internet, I'm always looking for a side hustle to grow my money. I tried drop shipping extra long sweaters for dachshunds, filled out a million online surveys. But you know what was the easiest way? Opening a share certificate at Suncoast and watching my money grow with literally no effort and guaranteed returns. Save your time and your money. And visit Suncoast today. No hustle required.
Minimum deposit required. Other terms and conditions apply.
Blog Talk Radio.
Ground and Pound Radio Show. I am your host, Mark Radulich, and I am thrilled to be up on a Sunday morning. I've got my coffee. I've got my bagel. I prefer schmear this morning as opposed to the lox or the whitefish that I was discussing earlier in the week. I've got the news in front of me. I'm ready to go. We're going to talk about this, and we are taking your calls this hour. If you want to give us a call, the number is 323-657-0901. So grab that coffee, grab that bagel, put some schmear on it or some lox or some whitefish. Settle down and let's talk MMA. 323-657-0901. Last night, UFC gave us its final event for the month of February 2011, UFC 127, Penn versus Fitch, live in Sydney, Australia at the Acer Arena. And what an event it was. All right, I'm a little excited, overly excited this morning, maybe a little overdramatic. People going into this fight, there was some different reactions to it. Some thought it was going to be a bit of a yawner. Some people thought, maybe this will be BJ Penn's, start on BJ Penn's quest for welterweight gold, et cetera, et cetera. It was a lot of things, and certainly there was some stuff coming out of that fight that definitely needs to be talked about. So I don't want to waste a tremendous amount of time here with jibber-jabber and the fussing and all that. I want to get right to talking about this show. So quick results, if you haven't seen it. You had Carl Walburton defeating, I can't even pronounce this guy's last name, but somebody, Juzetsko, by unanimous decision. Mark Hunt, who nobody picked, I think. I mean, one person, I think, on the 401 staff picked this guy to win, and he did. Boy, Death Clutch really produces some amazing athletes, I tell you what. So knockout, second round, and he made Chris Tucker's eye there just look gross. In happier news, faster than I could actually type it, Zhang defeated Jason Reinhardt via submission in the first round with a guillotine. And as I was doing live coverage last night, I was actually alone with my infant daughter, and I was trying to get her to sleep. She fell asleep right as the preliminaries were starting. And I turned around to start typing, and bang, it was over. So that was fantastic. Anthony Peresh defeated Tom Blackledge via submission with a rear naked choke. Nick Ring, and we are going to talk about this, boy, defeated, and nobody knows why or how, Ricky Fukuda by unanimous decision. I don't know whose unanimous decision this was, but unanimously they decided this guy won the fight. We'll talk about it. Alexander Gustafsson defeated James Tahuna with submission with a rear naked choke. Ross Pearson and a bang-bang, knock him out, drag down, Pier 6 brawl defeated Spencer Fisher by unanimous decision. That was a fun fight. Kyle Noak defeated Chris Camozzi in the Battle of the Toof alumni with a submission with a rear naked choke. Brian Eversole and another war in the fight of the night with Chris Lytle won via unanimous decision. Dennis Seaver, who has the one shirt I want out of last night, I have looked all morning as I was prepping for this show. I wanted that T-shirt. that he walked out with, the Deutschland MMA walkout shirt. Defeated George Soteropoulos via unanimous decision. I know that the guys coming on the show today have some thoughts about that. Michael Bisping spit in George Rivera's eye. No, Michael Bisping defeated Jorge Rivera, by a second-round TKO. And we will talk about the infamous knee. And BJ Penn and John Fitch went to a majority draw. You know, I understood that, and I'm fine with it as far as that's the decision that was made. I'm just not a fan of draws. I always feel very, very let down, like, we needed a decisive finish. But we'll get into all of that. So, again, you want to give us a call, talk about how you felt about the show, 323-657-0901. And so, without further ado, to help break it down, from a view from the cheat seats, back with us again, Scott Katowski. How you doing, Scott?
Good. How you doing, Mark?
I'm fantastic. And the author of the Rear Naked column, Samer Kadi. How are you, Samer?
I'm doing well. What's up, guys?
Excellent. All right. So first impressions of the show overall, Scott. What did you think?
You know, I thought it was good. You know, overall, I liked it. A lot of people thought Fitch and Penn might be a snoozer, and I think there were some interesting twists and turns in there. Bisping Rivera kind of unfolded how I pretty much thought it would. Soteropoulos, that was right there. That was a shocker. So, good. I like a show where the action's good, but I also like a show where we get some things out that afterwards are worth talking about, and I think that's what this show's provided us.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely a table full of discussion here. Samer, your initial thoughts on the show?
I totally agree with Scott. I mean, there are so many narratives to talk about after the show, which coming in wasn't that obvious. I mean, outside of the main event, which was a very relevant fight in the welterweight division, there wasn't much to talk about. I mean, yeah, we expected some decent fights, as these overseas cards tend to deliver. But, nobody expected Michael Bisping to, perhaps they do, given his history, but whatever. I mean, Bisping Rivera, the fight went as I expected, but the antics certainly didn't. The main event, I thought, was way better action-wise than most of us thought it would be. And, yeah, I mean, outside of that, we got a breakthrough performance by Dennis Seaver, who emerged as a new contender in a very stacked lightweight division. So, overall, yeah, I thought it was a good card.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had a lot of fun watching it. There were times when I'm watching an MMA card and, there's a lot of grappling going on, but even the grappling isn't tremendously interesting, or, you have a lot of circling, standing on the feet and circling, and it just feels like the fight's just not going anywhere. And always a good indicator of, and this used to be even with the old WWE pay-per-views, a good indicator of how interesting a pay-per-view is if, you've got a bunch of people in the room, and if they're all talking about something else than what's on TV, the fight's not too good. But this one was. People were really involved in it. It was a good show. The action itself, let's talk specifically about Penn versus Fitch for just a moment. I had expected Penn, and wrote about this in the roundtable, I had expected Penn to come out like he did against Matt Hughes. I expected him to kind of come running across the ring and really want to, keep the fight on the feet, which, instead of going to the ground, which was John Fitch's bread and butter. So I was really surprised that, and he said this in the post-fight press conference, that he's tired of boxing with people and, floating in and floating out. He feels that the judges look down on that. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so he wanted to grapple with John Fitch. And, and that's his right as a fighter. He felt he could win that way. I was just surprised. The other side of that was I was surprised at how, I don't know if vicious is the right word, but definitely John Fitch was pretty aggressive with BJ Penn. I mean, this wasn't just laying on him and controlling him. He messed BJ Penn's face up. So some thoughts on that, Scott. Were you surprised that he came out that way and opted to go with that kind of a game plan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? The fact that none of us saw that coming, including John Fitch, that right there is a testament to that game plan. That was just an excellent game plan. To come out and shoot on a guy that is a world-class wrestler who is known for taking his opponents down. To do that, I just think that was just an excellent game plan. And quite honestly, for the first 2 rounds, it worked great. It worked great, and he was pretty successful in it. You know, obviously much more successful in the first round, and Fitch, in the second round was, he's still able to take him down, and Fitch was able to adjust and kind of figure things out. But I thought it was an excellent way to steal the first 2 rounds. At least that's, I gave him the first 2 rounds, and it was funny because we talked about this last week that in order to really get this fight, in order to win this fight, Penn was probably going to have to dominate striking in the first couple of, at least take the first round and then keep it close for the other 2 rounds. And who really thought that we would see him run across the cage and try to take John Fitch down? And I thought it was great. A really good game plan, and it changed the dynamic of what we expected to see. We expected to see BJ counterpunch, Fitch, clinch and put him up against the cage and try to take him down, and it changed that. And I think that made it a great fight.
Why do you think Fitch couldn't finish him on the ground?
Honestly, because Fitch isn't a finisher. Fitch isn't a finisher at all. He goes to the Gray Maynard School of Fighting. He is looking to do enough just to get the win. He said that at the end of the fight. Did you think you did enough to get the decision? Well, yeah, I did. Okay, well, you didn't, and there you go. And it's an unfortunate reality, but guys like Fitch and Gray Maynard, that they don't go for the kill. He is looking to do just enough to not get stood up and to win the decision. And if you're so far down on the cards that you require a stoppage in order to win, and you're just a guy that likes to go to decision, you're not going to win.
Well, then I'm going to throw this to you, Samer. I want you to weigh in on all this, but I want you to add this one in there. If John Fitch is seen as this guy who can't finish fights or doesn't finish fights, actively is choosing to not finish, and is going for points or is just going for control, just enough to eke out a decision victory, is it worth the UFC, who has now become a cut above the rest, really, where the best people anywhere in the world will come to fight, is it worth keeping him around for? Because I feel like then he's taking a top spot from somebody who does finish fights. And, the trap door is beneath everybody now in the UFC as far as if you're not performing at the elite level, they'll find something else for you to do. So go ahead, Samer. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, well, he's definitely worth keeping around. I mean, John Fitch is not only the second best welterweight in the world. I think he's one of the best fighters in the world based on his record and results and the quality of opposition he's beaten alone. So it would be really unfair to say he doesn't deserve to stick around, especially because, A, I don't think Fitch gets paid that much compared to the top fighters, and B, how often does Fitch main event a card anyway? I mean, at best, until the show and the one title shot against GSP, at best he's in the co-headline spot, co-main event, or sometimes he even fights on the undercards. I mean, okay, those days are long gone, but not so. Actually, a year ago he fought against Ben Saunders. I think it was at UFC 111, and it was an undercard fight. So yeah, he's definitely worth keeping around. I mean, honestly, I think it's a bit of a stretch to suggest that. Well, he's not worth keeping around. I mean, how many guys at welterweight can beat John Fitch? And how many guys at welterweight are finishers to begin with? Is Josh Koscheck a finisher? Why? Because he knocked out Frank Trigg? I mean, I'd bet my life on John Fitch finishing Frank Trigg. So GSP, I'm a huge GSP fan, and yeah, he is a finisher, but like, how many fights has he finished lately? I mean, when you face these guys fight in and find out, you can't expect them to finish. How many guys have finished BJ Penn? I must disagree with Scott on one thing. Yeah, Fitch historically hasn't been the most active guy, but I mean, in this fight, he beat the crap out of BJ Penn in the third round. How many guys finished BJ Penn on the ground? There was literally one guy who was Matt Hughes when he got that crucifix when BJ had already, he had a cracked rib or something. Even GSP, he beat him down for 4 rounds, and if BJ hadn't quit in between rounds, I'm not sure GSP would have finished him in that fifth round. So a lot of that can be attributed to Penn's toughness and chin. How often have we seen Penn rocked, whether on the feet or on the ground? Never. How many times have he been submitted? Never. So you got to take that into account as well. Props to Fitch in that third round. I mean, in my opinion, he won the second, and I'll have more on that later. But in the third round, in between rounds, his corner told him to go for broke, which I thought was odd. But in hindsight, it turns out to be a great piece of advice because on two of the judges' scorecard, he was down. Two of the judges gave Penn the first two rounds, and Fitch really needed a 10-8 round, and he secured that with his third round onslaught. So, no, I think he deserves credit there. He really beat B.J. Penn down in the third round, and you can see it on B.J. Penn's face, both literally and figuratively. I mean, he was deflated, he was down, he looked beaten, and he was also beaten up. You can see the cuts there. So, in my opinion, it was arguably the most impressive round, that third round, that is, of John Fitch's career.
Is B.J. Penn done with fighting? And I ask this based on not just his post-fight remarks. I mean, this seems to be an ongoing theme now where someone gets the crap beat out of them, they say they're done, and then they kind of wake up the next morning and go, well, maybe not so much. But he said at the end of the fight, he's got to really think about his career. And then he went to the post-fight presser, and what he said was, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and he didn't think that he deserved a title shot. If the question was put, if GSP beats Jake Shield and then gives up the welterweight title, would he take a title fight against John Fitch for the vacant title? And he said, I think I need either a win over John Fitch to even qualify for that, or another win to get me, in the welterweight division to get me closer there. But words are words, and that's fine. I feel like just watching B.J. Penn's demeanor and even based on his performance last year, that he just doesn't seem like he wants to do this much longer. And when he's not finding the kind of success that that made him so popular. Where am I off base on that? What do you guys think? Go ahead, Scott.
I think it's BJ just being BJ.
What does that mean?
I think that's just him. He didn't. He met some adversity and he kind of bummed by it. I think he was disappointed by his performance in the third round, and he's bummed out. But we've seen BJ do that before, and I don't think he's done. The truth is, he went toe-to-toe for 15 minutes with a guy who not many people really picked him to defeat. He did stuff to, for the first, round, and a good part of the second round, he took Fitch down, and, he really, I don't know whether, outside of facing GSP, I don't know whether John Fitch had ever been that far down in a fight before. And that says a lot. Neither of them got the win. They fought to the draw. But in my mind, this kind of raises B.J. Penn's stock in the welterweight division because we haven't ever seen anybody else do this to John Fitch aside from GSP. So, he's probably disappointed. But I think, come this week, you're going to see B.J. Penn, wanting to get back in there, wanting to fight because it was, outside of his performance in the third round, this was a good fight for him. And I think he showed some stuff that most people didn't expect to see from B.J. Penn. I don't think we're done seeing B.J. Penn fight.
Seymour, what are your final thoughts on Penn versus Fitch? What else do you think hasn't been said here? And do you think he's done?
I think, BJ, after he lost to GSP in 2009, he had kind of the same reaction. Granted, that was a bigger beatdown. He was more disappointed with the loss. He actually lost as opposed to getting a draw here. But he also talked about calling it a day, and then, when the dust settles, I think he'll fight again. I totally agree with Scott in the sense that it was a positive performance for BJ. And I think the interesting thing with BJ is that he doesn't need fighting. he's already made a lot of money. His family is rich to begin with. He's a father now, and he relishes being a father. He's enjoying it. So he doesn't need fighting. He just does it because he likes it. And the day his motivation is going to decrease, which has happened before, he might call it quits again. I mean, BJ is that type of guy. I think if he continues fighting, honestly, especially at welterweight, I would personally love it because it still feels fresh. I mean, think of it this way. Outside of this recent Fitch fight, how many guys has Penn fought at welterweight? GSP 2 times and Hughes 3 times. So there are still a ton of matchups for him. Penn versus Alves, would anybody be opposed to that? Even a rematch with Fitch, Koscheck. I mean, I would favor Penn over a lot of guys. Does anybody really think that Penn doesn't submit Dan Hardy in one round? Doesn't he beat Martin Kampmann down? Diego Sanchez again? I think he's definitely one of the better welterweights out there. So if he is to continue fighting, I'm all for that. I think if GSP beats Shields and moves to middleweight, vacates the title, I think it would be very appropriate for the UFC to have a Fitch-Penn rematch for the vacant title, and I definitely think BJ would jump all over that. I mean, yeah, the press conference, he said he would like to win an extra fight, and he didn't even seem that committed into fighting again, but I think he'll fight again, especially if it's for the title. I think he'll jump all over that challenge. I don't think he beats Fitch in a 5-rounder, but yeah, it was definitely a positive performance. So, yeah, I think we'll see BJ Penn again.
You throw out some interesting ideas there for BJ Penn. The one that immediately came to my mind was BJ Penn versus Josh Koscheck. I think that's a really bankable, sellable co-main event or the headliner of a TV card. And I'd like to see BJ Penn against one of the 3 through 6 top welterweights. Josh Koscheck being at the top of that list, just because I think that's the most sellable fight. If you want to give us a call, it's 323-657-0901. I guess, like I said, I'm never satisfied with a draw, just because I like to see definitive ends to a fight, even if it's a terrible one. Rick Fukuda, Nick Ring. But some people, there was some discussion about this. A draw is sometimes just as good as any other. If it's earned, if they feel like you really couldn't pick a winner in this one, a draw is fine. Were you guys satisfied with that decision?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we don't, up until Maynard fought Frankie Edgar, we didn't see it. We haven't seen the draws, in the UFC. I mean, if it happened, it was almost always on the undercard. And normally, I don't know, I kind of think that if a year ago that this same fight would have happened, we probably would have seen a split decision somehow. And, I don't know, I think now, I think a draw was appropriate. I mean, obviously it could go either way, but I don't think the draw was I don't think anybody was robbed with that draw,
Same reason satisfied with the draw?
Yeah, I don't think anybody was robbed. I mean, you can't call that a robbery when a fight like Fukuda Ring was on the same card. I mean, if that's a robbery, then the other one is a crime. But
we'll get to that.
I wouldn't say I was satisfied just on the basis that I scored the fight for Fitch. But it was by no means a horrible decision. I mean, the second round is really the one that decided the fight. I think it's borderline. Penn got back control, but Fitch reversed that and landed some really effective strikes. I mean, I have the stats in front of me. Yeah, I think he outlanded Fitch in that round by 59-18. I mean, Fitch outlanded Penn by 59-18, which is pretty significant. But yeah, I mean, if you give Penn that round, that's acceptable. I don't think it's the worst thing we've ever seen. And it's actually kind of refreshing to see the judges give a 10-8 round on the third. Usually they're very hesitant to give those. So, yeah, I mean, I thought if a fight is a draw, it's a draw. I mean, I thought Maynard Edgar was a draw, and that was fine. So, yeah, I don't see the outrage when draws. I mean, certainly they're not the most satisfying results. You want a more definitive ending, but if it's a draw, then I don't mind.
Jorge Rivera, Michael Bisping. This one really got sold within the last few days of the fight with the antics from Jorge Rivera, the trash talking at the press conference, etc. And they went in there, and Michael Bisping It was a fun fight to watch, and I was really pulling for Bisping. You know, I always like a good, good scrappy fighter, and I really, and he really came out with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy, and then he kneed him in the face while he was on the ground. Now, Bisping's defense of this, I've been on the internet all morning trying to figure out what exactly was going on with this guy, and it's interesting because he went into it just ready to murder this guy, and at the end of it, he was like, I'm an emotional man, and, he really got to me, and, I didn't mean it, and very apologetic, sort of a weird turn. But specifically on the knee, he was saying that it wasn't intentional. He absolutely was not trying to knee him in the face. He was timing it so that as soon as Jorge got up off of his knee, he'd get him again, and he just pulled the trigger too soon. I'll get to the spitting in a second. To me, that's a separate issue. This is fighting. Things happen, and I was grappling with a guy on Tuesday night, and I accidentally hit him in the face. These things do happen. What did you guys think? Do you think, he was just gunning for him, and that's the excuse he threw out there, or do you think it was a legitimate accident? I'm going to throw that to you, Samer.
It certainly was no accident. I mean, he intended to throw a knee. Whether he was fully aware, I mean, he certainly was aware that Rivera was on the ground. I mean, there's no way you can mistime a knee by that much. Rivera wasn't even close to being up. Was Bisping malicious about it in the sense that did he realize it was a foul and was totally conscious? No. I think it was kind of a heat of the moment thing where, you see an opportunity, you go after it. He can't realistically claim it wasn't intentional. Of course it was. What else was he trying to do? But we see it all the time. I don't think every time somebody throws an illegal strike, they mean it, unless it's like a blatant headbutt or something. I don't think Bisping was stupid enough to do it at the risk of being disqualified. I mean, Rivera could have took a dive and that was it. But it was definitely negligent or ignorant on Bisping's behalf. I mean, you need to have more composure than that. So I don't think it was anything intentional in the sense that he was he realized what he was doing and did it. But yeah, it was certainly a foul. And one thing about that, it always makes me I don't know. It makes me laugh when fighters milk these things. I mean, yeah, the knee connected cleanly, certainly, but. If we watched Pride, we've seen knees hit guys in the face on the ground all the time, and not once have I seen a guy just go down by a single knee on the ground. In the UFC, every time it happens, whether it's Josh Koscheck, now Rivera, it certainly hit him. I'm not accusing him of being a faker or something, but he definitely milked it. The moment he realized the fight was going to be stopped or whatever, yeah, I can continue. I don't buy that. I'm sorry. But yeah, I thought it was admirable of him to continue because he could have easily taken a dive and he would have won the fight.
Scott, your thoughts on the errant knee and Bisping's defense of it?
I agree with Samer. He can say that it wasn't intentional. He intended to knee him. It was probably just a lapse in judgment. He was emotional. Bisping did make a good point in the post-fight press conference. Fighting is a split-second thing. And if he's trying to time that knee so he can get Rivera just as he's getting off his knees, I could see him maybe pulling the trigger early. And accidents happen. As far as and it's funny. Sam mentioned something, and I'd spoken to some other friends about it too, in regards to how Rivera laid there. And in Pride, we've seen people get kneed in the face, and they it never takes them that long to recover. And I think the one difference is that in Pride, people expected the knee. I mean, maybe didn't welcome it, but I think they expected it. And so when it happened, it wasn't like, okay, stop, hold on here, let me collect myself and make sure that I'm okay. It was, okay, I need to make sure that doesn't happen again, and I need to get out of this situation. And I think that's the big difference at what we see in the UFC. Maybe not with Josh Koscheck, who loves the theatrics and will. When a knee misses him by a country mile, he's still laying on the ground, yelping in pain. But I think in Rivera's case, what it was is, he got kneed in the face and he realized he caught a good knee. Probably wasn't hurt, but I think he wanted to sit there for a minute and say, okay, well, let me take a breath and let me try to get rid of this adrenaline. And am I really hurt? I don't want to jump back up with a broken orbital or, with my nose on the other side of my face, so let me just lay here for a second and find out, am I okay to keep going? And I think that's what we saw. But, Bisping, he got mad. He got emotional. Jorge Rivera, his tactics work. And he got Bisping probably a little out of his game. Honestly, I thought Rivera could have played it up a little bit more. He had Bisping fired up. He knew he had him. He mentally, he had taken him somewhat out of his game, and I was actually surprised Rivera didn't play things up a little bit more to keep doing that. And I think it could have paid off a little bit more than what it did. But hey, it's a fight. This stuff happens. I don't think Bisping's a dirty fighter. His emotions probably got in the way. And that was it.
I think they should have thrown the fight out. That was my first reaction to that. I was going to turn to my friend. I'm like, well, this one's going to get disqualified. And then they just deducted a point, and he ended up finishing the fight. But I don't know.
Rivera's corner and his trainers have said that they want to have the decision overturned. That they want to see Michael Bisping suspended because of the knee and stuff. I think that's sour grapes. If Jorge Rivera had come back and knocked out Michael Bisping, then the knee would have been totally inconsequential. But because Jorge Rivera then just got finished up against the cage, now suddenly the knee was the entire catalyst. Even though he said, hey, I can keep fighting, he had an opportunity to say, you know what, I don't think like I can keep going, and he had the opportunity to walk away with whatever win bonus he would have gotten and stuff like that. He didn't take it. Too bad. I think trying to blame Michael Bisping after the fact that's just sour grapes and poor sportsmanship in my mind.
Samer, think they should have thrown the fight out? Think he really didn't deserve to have that continue?
Oh, no, certainly it should have continued. I mean, we've seen it time and time again when guys get hit with knees and they continue. I mean, Rivera almost knocked Bisping out in that second round. I think he hit him with a straight right, and I think he kind of knocked him down too. So he was definitely okay to continue. To go back on my point, I don't fault Rivera for what he did. It was smart. He made sure Bisping lost the point, which he totally deserved. So I don't fault him. I just thought it was kind of funny. And no, the fight shouldn't have been stopped. Definitely not. I mean, we've seen guys take way worse beatings and continue and win. So am I supposed to believe that Rivera couldn't continue after he'd taken like 3 minutes of rest just because he got hit with one knee? Not to say that a knee doesn't hurt, but these guys are fighters. So no, the fight should have definitely continued.
I'm not saying they should have stopped the fight. No, and I'll let you respond to this. I'm not saying they should have stopped the fight because Rivera was unable to go on. I'm saying if you blatantly do something illegal, an errant finger in the eye is one thing. You throw a north-south elbow, against the rules. What was that?
Elbow. Yeah.
You do that, or you purposely throw a knee at somebody on the ground, or you do something that's blatantly illegal. You earn a disqualification. I don't. Somebody said it's not like football where you get another shot at the guy, next time at the line. So that's where I was going with this. Was if it's unintentional, you deduct a point. Bad boy, you start. You restart him and then you move on with life. When it looks that intentional, I think that was where I was coming from. He just looked like he just said, "Oh, to hell with the rules. I'm going to kill this guy." That's where I was coming from. Go ahead. I'll let you respond to that.
I'm going to need to check the unified rules about that one, but I'm fairly certain that you get disqualified if the foul you committed resulted in the other fighter not being able to continue. Okay. That's my point. Unless it's totally accidental. I mean, if you went for an inside leg kick, hit his groin, he couldn't continue, I think that's a no contest. That's not a disqualification. Right. In this case, the knee was intentional. Whether Bisping realized it or not, he was actually throwing a knee. So if Rivera hadn't been able to continue, then absolutely that's a disqualification. But as long as he said he could continue, and, we can debate whether you should actually ask the fighter, because in most cases, fighters will choose to continue, whether it's an injury, an eye injury. We talked about this with Feijao last week, Josh Koscheck. That's a different issue. But Rivera chose to continue. He knew what was wrong with him better than anybody else. If he thought he could continue, then he could. Now, if Bisping had done it again, or like a similar foul, then yeah, absolutely. Either deduct another point or just straight disqualification. There's no doubt about that. So, no, I honestly, I think it would be a bit of a stretch for the fight to be stopped because of a knee in which clearly Rivera managed to recover from.
Dana White told Michael Bisping to settle down, keep you cool, keep your head about you after the fight was over, and Bisping looked like he was going back and forth between taunting the Rivera camp, and then he wanted to hug Rivera, and then he was taunting again, and I had not quite the sick feeling, but I definitely had a sort of an upset stomach over, oh, Christ, I hope this doesn't end in a brawl, just because I don't think MMA needs the embarrassment. Samer, you had some thoughts about the post-fight antics of Michael Bisping?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about those. On one hand, I absolutely loathe it when fighters engage in trash talk before the fight and then simply hug it out. I mean, you can't, you can because they do it, but you shouldn't, rip the guy before the fight and then after the fight claim, oh, I was all for building the fight. No, if you hate a guy, you hate a guy. I'm not saying don't shake his hands post-fight or hit him a la Paul Daly, but, you don't have to be friendly after the fight like Josh Koscheck did with GSP in Montreal. I mean, good thing he was humble about it, but so on one hand, yeah, after everything that Rivera did, I can understand Bisping's frustration. I mean, if you beat a guy down after everything he talked about you, rub some salt in his wound. But spitting at his corner, telling him go home loser and all that crap, and then claiming I'm a sensitive guy when you're Michael Bisping and you have a history of doing much worse things. I mean, who can forget the Matt Hamill decision where Bisping clearly lost the fight and then he acted as though he just beat Matt Hamill's ass after the split decision was announced? Who could forget his antics against Dan Henderson? So it's a bit ironic, and it's kind of rich coming from Bisping himself, who's known to be a bit of there's no polite way to say this, so I'll leave it at that. But I thought Bisping,
he acts like a douchebag at times.
All right, yeah, I was going for worse, but good. Yeah, he's definitely that. He's definitely that. I mean, you look at Bisping, and then he actually demanded Rivera to apologize. No, you just beat his ass. He doesn't have to apologize. You talked in the ring, in the cage, or whatever. You answered with your fist. Good for you. But then apologize. And then he told him something like, "You talked about my family." Okay, I've seen these Rivera videos. I didn't find them particularly entertaining, but at no point did Rivera discuss Bisping's family or anything like that. So it's safe to say that Bisping overreacted on that one.
Scott, you were about to jump in there?
Yeah, like Samer said, that's Michael Bisping. He's an ass. That's why no matter where he goes outside of England, as he's walking to the cage, he's getting booed. People don't like him. He's cocky, and he's just got a demeanor that turns fans off. People love to tune in to, because they want to see him get smashed. I mean, I guarantee there were loads of fans sitting across America that just wanted to see Jorge Rivera knock him right into the canvas. And unfortunately that didn't happen, but, so was the spitting and all that probably, was that going too far? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was the go home loser, that type of stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's just, did it surprise me? Not really, but Jorge Rivera wanted him fired up, and he got him fired up. In the event that Jorge Rivera wasn't going to win, he had to assume that Michael Bisping was going to want to, really, rub some salt in his wounds. And
going forward, if Anderson Silva GSP does happen for later this year, do we think Yushin Okami takes Michael Bisping to keep each other busy? Give Michael Bisping an opportunity to crack his way towards a shot at maybe Anderson Silva after the GSP fights, assuming he still keeps the title. Where does Michael Bisping go from here?
Oh gosh, we talked about this before the show started. I don't really see Michael Bisping anywhere near the to use one of Dana White's terms. I don't see him in the mix at all. I mean, if somehow a win over Jorge Rivera puts somebody in the mix, we need to really look at the middleweight division of what's supposed to be the best, fighting promotion in the world. Because Michael Bisping has had some good wins. His win over Akiyama was good, and of course he was able to beat Chris Lieben in a fight that not many people really enjoyed. So yeah, he is a talented guy, but could I see him beating Chael Sonnen? No. Could I see him beating Nate Marquardt? Nope. I wouldn't give him much of a chance against Damian Maia. I'm not even certain that I would favor him in a fight with Brian Stann. So, I don't know. I don't see him fighting Yushin Okami. I don't think he deserves it yet. I mean, honestly, I would need to see Michael Bisping beat two more guys that are, ahead of him in the rankings in order to, really even be worthy of being considered a title contender.
Maybe we put him on the line that's currently forming to the left to fight Wanderlei Silva.
Well, he had his fight with Wanderlei.
Right.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said there, Samer.
No, I was saying exactly what Scott said. I said they fought last year in Australia, and Wanderlei hasn't fought since, so I'm not sure the rematch happening this soon would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm. That's just making a joke. Everybody seems to want to fight Wanderlei these days. But coming out of that, maybe he fights then Brian Stann next to Nate Marquardt. Somebody had mentioned at the press conference, Chael Sonnen actually might be a suitable opponent. Chael's going to need a welcome back fight, and that's another sellable one based on personalities, because Chael Sonnen's another one that likes to run his mouth, and we'll see how that affects Michael Bisping. Where does he go from here, Samer? Real quick, because I want to move on to the next fight.
I would love a Chael Sonnen fight. If nothing else, the trash talk will be epic, and I think it will be competitive. But I don't think Bisping wins. Either that or Nate Marquardt if he beats Akiyama, or either the winner of Stan Santiago. I think those are the three appropriate fights. Damian Maia would be nice as well. I think he beats Maia, by the way, but I don't think he beats any of the other top five guys. If nothing else, throw him against Anderson Silva, let him get his ass kicked, and everybody will be happy.
There you go. Let's just elevate him to the top of the middleweight division. He gets Anderson Silva at the GSP. That'll be great, and then that'll be his last match.
Exactly.
I want to talk about Nick Ring versus Ricky Fukuda for just a moment. I mean, I wouldn't have even made I wouldn't have even registered if Fukuda had won the decision. So when they gave it to Nick Ring, not only a split decision, a unanimous decision, I'm looking around the room and I'm like, did I just watch the wrong fight? Do I have these guys? I mean, I'm writing the coverage of this, and I'm like, did I mix up who's who? And I watched some of the fight again afterwards, and I said, I don't understand. I mean, if I had to, gun to my head, defend the decision, I could, based on MMA judging seems to be pulled directly from boxing judging, and nothing else seems to matter. So you could kind of sort of give it to Nick Ring there. But Jesus Christ, one of the worst decisions I've seen since Leonard Garcia and Nam Fan. Go ahead, Scott. What was your reaction to that?
It was funny. I actually started thinking about the old, well, not really old, but I remember thinking about Bas Rutten talking in Pride about how if it was up to him, the unified rules, or at least the rules that they used, would have been that if a fighter gets a takedown but then actually does nothing with it, then he would actually be penalized in the scorecard, because in his mind that was just stalling. And as Fukuda was, who has excellent takedowns, by the way, as he was getting his takedowns, he wasn't really doing a lot on the ground. He was able to, get his dominant position, but ultimately, he wasn't able to hold Ring down, and wasn't doing a massive amount of damage even when he was landing any shots. And when I saw the decision, I actually thought, oh my gosh, they must have gone to the Bas Rutten school of judging, where hey, if you get a takedown and you don't do anything with it, you're going to be penalized, because on the feet, Ring was landing much better.
Yes.
I actually think Fukuda, though, started coming on in the second and third round, because Ring really abandoned his leg kicks, which were just outstanding in the first round, and he just really kind of seemed to slow down. And as I actually thought Fukuda's takedowns were starting to work, in that I could see Ring getting a little discouraged. I mean, I think in his mind he thought, I'm losing this, and I've got to start doing something, and he could never stop the takedown. And the look on his face told me, this is a man that knows he's really losing. He's behind on the scorecards, and so he's going to, and he never really pulled the trigger a lot on the feet. And, the decision sucked. But, thankfully, it's going to be one of those decisions, at least on the surface now, where it's not really going to affect either guy. Both guys are going to go forward. I mean, we're not going to see Ricky Fukuda get cut from the UFC because of this. So, I mean, is it a travesty? Yeah. just one more notch in what we'll consider the progression of, or lack of progression of, judging in MMA.
Sammy, you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I'll look at this from a slightly different side. I mean, there's no doubt Fukuda won that fight. To be very generous, you can only give Ring the first round. After that, I don't see any way he could win it. But the interesting thing, in my opinion, is this was an overseas show. The UFC actually gets to choose some of the judges that they want to take with them to Australia. Mark Ratner, Dana White, and company. They're the ones who are in charge of that. And it's kind of unfortunate to see Dana go on a rant on Twitter. I mean, props to him for calling a spade and saying that the decision was crap, which it was. But you're the one who's choosing the judges. I mean, you get to look at their history, look at, like, Saudi Amato. I mean, come on. There's a website out there called MMA Decisions. It provides excellent database for every judge, and you can see some outrageous decisions. And the UFC keeps taking these guys for the overseas shows. I don't get this. So if you want to rant about it, then do something about it, because it's within your powers. Yeah, in the United States, it's mostly the athletic commissions who get to choose the judges. But still, I can't really buy that the UFC can do nothing about it. I mean, if Dana White says, I don't want to take this guy to Australia, I don't think the athletic commission can do anything about it. So it's kind of unfortunate.
Maybe make his life difficult when he comes back to the U.S.
Well, no, because, like, really, the athletic commissions, they need the UFC, honestly. I mean, yeah, Keith Kaiser and Dana White have a great relationship, and I'm sure Dana doesn't want to ruin that, and MMA is accepted in Nevada, and Kaiser, I'm sure, has done a lot for the sport too, but, I mean, like, you get to choose the one. Don't say, I mean, he doesn't have to, like, deny anybody the chance to go, but you can simply pick better judges, which, to be fair, there aren't many, but still, you can do better than Saudi Amato, in my opinion. So, as long as we keep seeing this happen, you're going to keep seeing guys like Fukuda get screwed. And the unfortunate thing is that a guy like Fukuda, who barely makes a decent living compared to other great fighters, has just missed out on a win bonus. And this could mean a lot for him and his family. I mean, an extra couple of $1,000. They would do much for a guy like Fukuda. I'm sure it's actually more than that. So it's kind of unfortunate, but what can you do? We're going to keep seeing this. I don't think it's changing anytime soon.
No, I would suspect not. Scott, what stood out on this card to you besides the matches that we've mentioned? Those were the three that, going into today's show, that stood out to me that I really wanted to talk about. You know, there were other fights that were on the card that were exciting, that were fun for me to watch, some real back and forth fights, but those are the three that I said, I want to talk about this. What spoke to you?
Dennis Seaver over George Sotiropoulos. I think that was a decision nobody saw coming. I think, you know, and it was funny because I believe it was last week, Samer mentioned that he thought that this was a sort of I believe you said, an unfortunate fight for Sotiropoulos to be matched up against somebody that, you know, had Sotiropoulos won this, probably wouldn't really elevate him up the lightweight ladder. And he fell to Seaver. And, I mean, Dennis Seaver, to his credit, just looked outstanding. I mean, he looked great in the past couple of fights. He looked great up against Andre Winner and just looked outstanding against Sotiropoulos. I mean, Sotiropoulos was able to come on in the second round and score on the feet, but never really had Seaver in trouble, couldn't get the fight to the ground, which you knew that's where Sotiropoulos wanted to take this fight and really had his best chance at winning. And, you know, Dennis Seaver just looked awesome. I mean, shook off his takedowns, hopped around on one foot for, I think at one point it was almost 20 seconds, you know, throwing punches at Sotiropoulos and fighting off the takedown. He just looked outstanding, and he looked huge compared to Sotiropoulos. I mean, you know, it helps that I think he's a couple inches shorter than him, but he just looked massive in the ring, you know, and supposedly had a very difficult weight cut, so, I mean, we thought stamina might be a problem, but just really looked good. And really, I mean, I don't know if this is a case of where Sotiropoulos maybe overlooked him, didn't take the fight as serious as he should have, or maybe this just exploits a hole in Sotiropoulos' game where his takedowns, you know, if the guy can shrug off his takedowns, he's really kind of, you know, kind of out there. But, you know, it was a very good win. I thought it was a very interesting fight. And, you know, we really saw Seaver kind of step up. That was a breakout fight for him. You know, this really, this puts him on. I don't know how far he's going to go in the lightweight division because we've seen him fall to guys like Melvin Gillard, but this is definitely one where you have to consider Seaver now. Somewhere, does it put him in the top 10? No. I could see him, though, put him in the top 15.
What spoke to you, Seymour? What jumped out of this on this card for you?
Yeah, the same fight. I certainly agree with Scott in regards to Seaver, who looked outstanding. I mean, he didn't even look close to being taken down. He hopped on one leg a la BJ Penn. His striking looked much improved. But that's what I said last week, is that it's a tricky matchup for Saudaratos that doesn't get him anywhere if he wins. And the thing is, Seaver is elevated, but as Scott said, I mean, is he anywhere close to title contention? No. Which is why I thought it was I didn't think it was the wisest bit of matchmaking. That said, I think two main factors contributed to Saudaratos' loss. A is Seaver's superior striking and takedown defense, but B, Saudaratos' takedown looked really, really poor. The single legs especially, I mean, he kind of just held Seaver's leg and didn't drive through. You don't attempt to just hold his leg and then push him. You have to drive through the takedown, and Saudaratos definitely didn't have that. More unfortunate is that you look at guys like Shinya Aoki, who's kind of like Saudaratos in the sense that he's great on the ground but doesn't have great takedowns. He still finds ways to take the fight to the ground by virtue of pulling guard, backing guys into corners, and then, just work for the single leg transition. And we didn't see Saudaratos even attempt that. Instead, he engaged in ill-advised stand-up exchanges and got dropped twice in the first round. He made some decent adjustments, threw more kicks, and did better in the subsequent rounds, but the fight was certainly over after that first round in the sense that you kind of saw where it was going. It didn't look like Saudaratos would get that takedown, and Seaver was just a superior striker.
Yeah, it definitely was a fun fight to watch. I really saw Seaver just real scrappy in that fight, and it was pretty exciting. And was one that I don't think initially I was paying very close attention to. I think I had a house full of people, and so my attention was elsewhere. And then I got drawn in by his performance. So good job there. Overall, like I said, wrapping up the segment in UFC 127. I always like to give things a chance. Whenever we hear it's an international card, just don't assume that it's going to that it's going to be boring or whatever, because those are the ones like I said last week where people turn it on and put in some stellar performances that you wouldn't quite expect. So I enjoyed the show. It'll be interesting to see what happens with BJ Penn and John Fitch coming out of this. I was unfortunately they couldn't get Dana White to stick around after the show, and so I think he threw the press conference to somebody else, and that's a shame because I always enjoy Dana White's reactions to some of these fights, and it was a shame that they couldn't have him there for that, though I'm sure we'll hear more from Dana White this week. One thing we did hear from Dana White, though, was, and this was part of, I believe, last week's, 2 weeks ago's Fact or Fiction that I participated in with Scott, was that Rampage was not going to be fighting Thiago Alves. He was not going to be fighting Rashad Evans, that he would indeed be fighting Matt Hamill. And I know from my taste in fighting and what I consider to be fun and marketable, that kind of knocked the wind out of me. I said, whatever, that's a fine fight and all, but not something I'm particularly excited about. But when asked specifically about the fight and why Dana White did not want to book Black on Black Crime 2, Electric Boogaloo, he said, look, talking's fun before the fight, but if you do all this talking and you go in there and you don't fight, who wants to see that crap again? Rampage, Rashad, the snooze fest, I don't want to see that fight again. Matt Hamill and Rampage might not talk a bunch of crap about each other before the fight, but when have you not seen Matt Hamill fight? Matt Hamill's going in there and he's going to try to beat him. And my reaction to that was, I saw the Rampage Evans fight, and no, was either one of them a ball of fire? No. But there were so many other variables to consider there. Rampage was just coming off a layoff. He hadn't fought in a while. He was fighting a guy who didn't particularly want to stand and trade with him. there was just a lot going into that fight where I understand the mentality of, well, if these guys hate each other so much, why didn't they just go in there balls to the walls? Well, let's make up our minds here. Do we want Pier 6 brawls, like the old FX fight nights where, guys are just throwing haymakers and there's no technique at all? Or do we want guys with smart game plans who win fights because of their ability? So I don't think, my opinion is I don't think that's a fair assessment of that first fight. If anything, the fact that it wasn't maybe as exciting as it could be is reason enough to do it again. But I know, Scott, you had actually disagreed with this. Where do you stand now? Do you think he's being fair to Rampage and Evans?
I don't know if fair is the term that I would use, but it doesn't surprise me. And I honestly, I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more at work in this than just what we are. This particular instance, I think there's probably some personal feelings, between Dana White and Rashad and Rampage that have probably kind of maybe, helped, or I don't want to say maybe it influenced his decision. Their build up to their first match was massive. They dedicated an entire, Ultimate Fighter, season to it, and of course, Rampage then it doesn't want to, committed to the movie, and so he couldn't fight, and so I'm sure that in some ways that probably pissed off Dana White. Then, Rashad wins that fight, Rashad wins against, Thiago Silva, and then, he fights Rampage. I thought the fight was decent. By no means it was, when you build a fight up to that level of hype, when you dedicate an entire season to it, and you've really at that point you're expecting something that you're never going to have that. Okay, they had hyped that fight to such a level, there was no way it was going to, pay off. Then I think that there's also a little bit of anger between, Dana White and Rashad, in that, they've offered, Rashad had the guaranteed title shot against Shogun, and he decided he was going to sit out, and he'd kind of been vocal against, the fact that he was sitting out, and then they'd offered him some fights, and, and then, of course, at the same time, they're offering Rampage fights, and, he doesn't want to take them, and I think it really came down to the point where Dana White said, you know what, okay, I'm not going to give you guys, another sweetheart deal. I'm not going to give you another sweetheart deal, so here's what I'm going to book you against Hamill, and you're going to sit out until your knee's healed. And I think that's what he did. And, the whole, I thought the first fight was a snooze fest. Maybe Dana White honestly believes that, but I think that's what he's going to say, because he doesn't want to say, I'm pissed at these guys. I'm pissed at them that I've given them each a couple of chances and that they haven't taken it. And, when they finally did get in the ring together, it wasn't, it didn't, set
the world on fire.
Yeah, it didn't live up to the build-up. So I think that's where he's at.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of this is just cover for the fact that he's pissed off at both guys. You mentioned all the various reasons he's pissed off at Rashad. He's not thrilled with Rampage, and not just because of the whole 18 deal. He's, he takes the Uchida fight, proceeds to then win the fight by decision, and then says, I don't think I really won the fight. And, and then there's Dana White banging his head against the wall. So I think you're onto something there, that this may have been his rationale for basically wanting to punish both guys and saying, to hell with both of you.
And here's the reality. Those guys, he doesn't, while Rashad and Rampage are still huge stars in the UFC, they don't have to be the go-to guys anymore.
Right.
You have John Jones. You have Phil Davis. You have all these young guys that are up-and-comers. So, he doesn't have to deal with shenanigans anymore. He doesn't have to play their games. So I don't think he's going to, and I think that's kind of what this decision is a signal of.
Samer, what do you think?
I'll agree with Scott in the sense that White is definitely influenced by his feelings towards both Rashad and Rampage. I mean, he made it clear he didn't agree with Rashad's decision to sit out, waiting for Shogun, and then I wouldn't say he was happy when Rashad got injured, but he kind of rubbed it in a bit and said that it wasn't the wisest of choices, which I would agree with. But all that aside, I like Dana White, obviously. I enjoy his honesty and everything, but sometimes you got to be a little more responsible than that. Snooze Fest, was it the most exciting fight? No. But then you say Hamill and Rampage will come to fight. I mean, Hamill, yeah, he's always game, but since when is Hamill like the epitome of excitement? Second of all, you look at the actual fight in Rashad Rampage. Who didn't come to fight? Was it Rashad or Rampage? What did Rampage do in that fight? Like, honestly. Rashad rocked him with the right hand. He took him down. It wasn't the most breathtaking performance, but he at least he had some offense. What did Rampage do aside from dropping him in the third round? Then you compare that to Rampage Machida, which White was adamant about Rampage's strategy. He was happy with it. But what did Rampage do? He clinched up. He landed 2 uppercuts in the entire fight. Props to him. I thought that was a brilliant strategy against Machida because he couldn't afford to trade with him. But if you're going to praise him for that, you have to praise Evans for employing, I wouldn't say a similar approach, but a strategic approach against Rampage as well. You can't have this double standards. Moreover, in an interview with Ariel Helwani before last Saturday's show, he kind of called everybody who doesn't enjoy John Fitch fights like, you're not a fan of MMA. I mean, I personally don't have much problems with Fitch's fights, but if you're going to defend Fitch, which is totally acceptable, you can't attack Rampage and Rashad for their fight. It was one fight. I would much rather see Rampage Rashad 2 than Hamill Rampage, especially because take into account the fact that Rampage is somebody who, like BJ Penn, needs to be motivated, needs to get up for fights, needs to have an opponent who's going to prompt him to train and take it seriously. And he made it clear that he doesn't want to fight Matt Hamill. He said it in as many words. Is that the thing you want with Rampage Jackson? Do you really want Rampage to show up out of shape and possibly lose to Matt Hamill? I don't think so. So, yeah, I definitely think White is being very unfair to both Rampage and Rashad Evans.
Yeah, but you bring up an interesting point, because if you're Dana White, that's almost a win-win for you. If Matt Hamill ends up walking into this fight and it beats soundly Rampage Jackson, you've really got a star in Matt Hamill. And I'm always I'm looking at this from what kind of story do you want to tell with a guy? You know, Matt Hamill was deaf. So there's a human interest story with this guy, and he beats somebody with a lot of stock in Rampage. And Rampage coming in with a lot of history from Pride, his history in the UFC. He's the guy that was just in a big movie. And Matt Hamill beats him. Suddenly Matt Hamill's a star. You know, not just a star in MMA, because I think that's the other thing. It's a very insular world. And so I get this a lot from the people who comment on our sites, is they tend to look at the world of MMA as if it's the only island in the sea, and it's not. And to bring in more people, to bring more people into the world of MMA, to bring in more fans, you want to make it as expansive as possible, and you do that with a story like Matt Hamill. But you got to set him up first. Now, the fact that he beat Tito Ortiz in a decision, I don't think does it for him. He beats Rampage and does it soundly. I think that there's something they can build on there. So I think for Dana White, you know, Rampage wins, great. People like to see Rampage. That's one more win for Rampage. Keeps him relevant in the light heavyweight division. Gets him closer to another title shot. You know, there's the horse he can ride for a little bit longer. He loses, and he makes Matt Hamill a star. That's a win-win for Dana White. Okay,
but there's a trade-off for that.
Excuse me?
Okay. There's a trade-off for that. I mean, I get what you're saying, and yeah, it's totally true. If Hamill wins, it's an inspirational story with everything he's went through, being deaf. Who doesn't like Matt Hamill? I mean, even if you don't care for him before the fight, you can't help but feel for the guy in the post-fight interviews with Rogan. I mean, that interview he gave after he beat Tito Ortiz, whom he considered a mentor, was really, like, heartwarming. But at the same time, let's say Hamill does beat Rampage. I wouldn't give him much of a chance, but suppose he does. Where does he go from there? Do you have a star? I don't think so, because I don't think he'll capitalize on that momentum. I mean, does Matt Hamill beat John Jones? They fought. We saw what happened. Yeah, he won via disqualification, but does he even get offense against John Jones? Does he beat Rashad Evans? I don't think so. Does he beat Lyoto Machida? He'll get destroyed by Lyoto Machida. Shogun? I don't think so. So by doing that, you risk losing a top guy who's a draw and very popular. I mean, Rampage Jackson, most people like him. He's colorful, he's entertaining, and when he's on point, he's a very exciting fighter. But if Hamill wins, it's a great feel-good moment on that night, but I don't think it translates into the future, because I don't think he'll capitalize on that momentum. If he proves me wrong and goes on to become UFC light heavyweight champion, it's probably one of the most inspirational stories in sports, but I don't think it's realistic.
Scott, you want to put a final point on that?
You know, I get what Samer's saying, you know, and to a certain degree, to a certain point, I agree with him. But, you know, I think Dana White's also trying to book new fights. You know, the first Rampage and Rashad fight, it's not like it was close. It's not like anybody was like, oh, you know, if it was a crazy decision. It wasn't. You know, Rashad won that. And so, you know, in the spirit of booking new matchups, that's what Dana White's done, you know. And
you're not a fan of rematches, I've noticed.
Well, you know, I'm a fan of rematches when it serves something. Okay, let's say Rashad and Rampage have a rematch. Do we really see, I mean, I would have to have the light heavyweight rankings in front of me, but do we see either, you know, if either of them wins, do we see a massive switch up in the light heavyweight rankings? Do we see one rise or fall dramatically, you know, above the other? No, they'd probably swap places, which, and like I said, I don't have the rankings in front of me, but I mean, what maybe one goes to 3 and the other one goes to 4? You know,
I think the way that this was set up was that had Thiago Alves stayed in his match with Rampage, the winner of that was getting the winner of Shogun Evans. Now the world changed and it became Shogun Jones, so presumably if Thiago Alves had stayed in that match, then it would have been Rampage versus the winner of Jones Shogun.
Yeah, and of course. But now we have, you know, why would you put Rashad Evans, why would you give him the opportunity to beat Rampage only to not want to challenge, say, John Jones if he wins the title, not want to challenge him for the fight? You know, you know, if you kind of follow that reasoning, why are you going to put Rashad Evans in line for a title shot that he might not take anyways?
Yeah, that's a valid point. And that's another one of the criticisms that Dana White has been making about Rashad Evans is that you've got too many friends and you're always not wanting to fight your friends, and this is, you know, and a lot of the guys on the board have said the same thing. For God's sakes, you're going to have friends who are fighters. That's what you do for a living. You know, and you're going to have to fight these people too. What are you going to do? Keep skipping weight classes until you run out of friends? You can't do that. So
well, I mean, but you got to look at it though from a matchmaking standpoint. Let's say they have Rashad and Rampage face off the second time with the promise that the winner gets a title shot, and Rashad wins again, which I think he probably would again because I think he's just faster and a little bit more dynamic. And John Jones wins the title. Okay, now Rampage is now not in line for a title shot. You have Rashad Evans, who isn't going to take a title shot, and now you have a matchmaker stalemate, where somebody who probably a certain percentage of people aren't going to feel as worthy of one is going to get a title shot.
Right.
And, you know, why set yourself up for that position? Why put yourself in that? If I'm a promoter or matchmaker, hey, you know what? You know, if you don't want to risk fighting a friend, then I'm not going to give you the opportunity to.
It does propose but I think that's where we're headed anyway. Because now that you put that all out there, if you do the math, if Jones does beat Shogun, who is the next person to? I mean, essentially, from what you were saying about the Rampage Hamill fight, it's winner takes all there. If Rampage beats Matt Hamill, okay, fine. So the next one is John Jones Rampage. If Matt Hamill beats Rampage, from what you both have said, he's not going to immediately get another shot at Jones, at which case you're right back to, well, who the hell do you make him fight?
But maybe he does get it. Maybe he does get a title shot. Let's say Randy Couture and Lyoto Machida is a snooze fest. Let's say it doesn't do anything for anybody, okay? And Forrest Griffin isn't, you know, in line to fight anybody, okay? At that point now, the UFC has a massive champion in John Jones, and they have the only guy that he's lost to in the UFC, Matt Hamill. Okay, is it a great fight? No. I mean, But could I see the UFC trying to, build some hype behind it? Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. If Matt Hamill beats Rampage and then can beat somebody else convincingly, I could see them hyping that fight. I could see them saying, Matt Hamill, the only man who holds the win over champion John Jones. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's kind of a pitch in the mud, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It's a good. Maybe it doesn't headline the pay-per-view. Maybe it co-headlines. Maybe there's, maybe it gets on there with a heavyweight matchup, or one of the lightweight matchups that people are clamoring for. I mean, maybe you put that on there with Uriah Faber. But I think you're right. I think that's the story that they go with. It's the one man who gave you only defeat on your record, and he's deaf, and he beat Rampage, versus John Jones, who's got the rocket strapped to him. That's actually not a bad story if that's what ends up happening. It's some pretty exciting stuff there coming down the pike. Switching gears for a moment, do either one of you follow boxing at all?
Just the big fights for me.
Just the big
fights?
Same. Okay. I try to follow it as much as I can, more so now that I have a few more channel options in my cable subscription. And I caught the fight on, I believe it was on Showtime last week. It was between Nonita Donaire versus Fernando Montiel. And there was a bit of controversy that came out of that fight. And why am I bringing this up on an MMA talk show? Because there's this, and this goes to the sanctioning of MMA. This goes to the comparisons between MMA and boxing, which sometimes I don't think you could compare the two, but people do. And there's always people compare MMA to football in the sense, in terms of injuries. So I guess you can compare it to anything if you really wanted to. But that's what people tend to talk about. Here you have two guys in a cage, able to throw all manner of limbs at one another, tackle each other to the ground, et cetera, and people talk about injuries. And they say, okay, well, clearly this is a brutal sport. But when you compare it to some of the other sports, all things being equal, you find MMA's, from an injury standpoint, a little bit safer than some of these other sports. Specifically with boxing, and I want to talk about this fight for a second. If you had an opportunity to watch the knockout that happened, what happened there was there was a knockdown, and the fighter got a standing 8 count. He gets back to his feet. Now, he's rocked on his feet at this point. He looks completely out to lunch, and had this been MMA, what was said about it was they'd have just stopped the fight. Sometimes, and people get upset about this because sometimes referees are a little too, they err on the side of caution a little too much. But when they see that a fighter, yes, may be standing, may be conscious, but there clearly is just not there, and he's not, and they'll just step in and stop it, and it's over, to protect the fighter. Well, this didn't happen. The ref let it go on, and then he got knocked out again to the point where his leg was twitching. I'm going to read you directly from MMAfighting.com. It says, one of the key differences between MMA and boxing is that when an MMA fighter gets knocked down by a punch, he has to be alert enough to protect himself or else the fight is over. In boxing, when a fighter gets knocked down, the ref starts counting, and the fighter has until a 10 count to get back to his feet, which means a boxer whose brain is concussed badly, as Montiel's brain was concussed when Donaire knocked him down in the second round, can stagger back to his feet and take more punishment. So my question to you guys is, do you feel that MMA is in fact safer than boxing the way that they set it up, or you really can't make a comparison, or do you even feel maybe that boxing is actually much more safer than MMA? I'll go to you first. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's important not to look at this from a fan point of view, because MMA fans will always tell you that MMA is safer than boxing, and then the other way around. Boxing fans will look at MMA as though it's too brutal. It takes place in a cage. People get hit on the ground. Getting hit on the ground, actually, it's funny because how many fighters generate much power when they're on top of someone? Not much. You can generate much more power when you're standing up. But just the thought that the other fighter is on his back and getting punched in the face, it creates the idea that it's brutal. Which, in fact, well, of course, it's violent. It's a combat sport, but I mean, I don't think it's as dangerous as getting punched in the face. Of course, if you have your head bouncing off the man and getting hit with power shots, that's different. But I think the most important thing to take into account is that we don't know about the implications or the effects of MMA once these fighters are retired. Boxing has been going on for years. We've seen what happens to boxers once they're retired by virtue of getting hit in the face over and over and over. I mean, there's certainly truth to that in the sense that sometimes these guys fight for 12 rounds, three-minute rounds for 12 rounds, doing nothing but getting punched in the face. In MMA, you have takedowns, you have submissions. You can win a fight without throwing a single punch. You take somebody down. Like we started yesterday, Kyle Noak. He took Kamodzi down. He took his back, choked him out in mere seconds, and that was it. So in that sense, yeah, it is safer. It's also, you're right about, I saw that video that you posted. Had this happened in MMA, at worst, the fighter who scored the knockdown would have followed up with 2 punches. The referee would have stopped, and that's it. So in that sense, yeah, it is safer. But on the other hand, do we know what's going to happen to somebody like Minotauro Nogueira once he's 50? Do we know what kind of brain damage he'll have, what his speech will look like? You listen to somebody like Chuck Liddell 5 years ago and listen to him now. He doesn't sound like James Toney, obviously, but he sounds more coherent. He sounded more coherent. Now he's kind of punch drunk. I guess it depends on the fight. Vanderlei Silva is another great example. I mean, this guy has been knocked out like 4 times in his career now. He's received a ton of punishments. He's been in so many battles. I mean, you can't know for sure. It's too early to tell. We don't have that kind of data in MMA. I think it's too early to say which one is safer. I'm sure we've been lucky so far not to have high-profile deaths or serious injuries in MMA. But it's unfortunate to say, but I think serious injuries are bound to happen. I mean, I don't share Dana White's view because sometimes he says, these guys, they're not risking their lives. And well, yeah, you're not. But you can't call it safe because he says MMA is a safe sport. No, it's not a safe sport. These guys are punching each other in the face. How could it be safe? It's relatively safe, yeah. The UFC and the commissions do the best job possible to provide safety, but it's not a safe sport. I mean, things can happen. So as of right now, I would say MMA is, in fact, safer than boxing, but I don't think it's to the extent that people will have you believe. We have to wait and see down the road what these fighters will look like once they're in their 50s, which in the case of Randy Couture is like in 2 years.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They haven't done enough longitudinal studies of what happens to fighters. I mean, we've seen what happens with Muhammad Ali, being a great example of this. But you make a good point that where boxing is you're sort of concentrating, hits to the head. With MMA, you can be lucky enough to go your entire career and take minimal damage to the face because you're always being submitted, or you tend to be a grappler, et cetera. But it does I think bring up a good argument that people have that usually favor boxing. There was an article, and I've talked about this a few times. That was talking about the sweet science of boxing and how much better it is than MMA, and because you really have to work a guy to get your punches in. And I said, well, you can have the same kind of strategy with MMA. In fact, there's just more variables in there because you have more to work with. And I don't think it's fair to just say MMA is the art of throwing people through glass windows. And certainly in this case, if you want to talk about the brutality of it, where in MMA you have a ref there whose primary job is to protect the fighter from taking unnecessary damage, where in boxing they don't do that, and clearly in boxing you get another shot at the guy. Scott, did you want to weigh in on this?
Well, to be fair, I also think it's a mindset. In that same interview that you talked about, Roy Jones Jr. They interviewed him and they asked him, should the fight have kept going, and he was all for letting that fight keep going because he said, you have to honor the champion by allowing him to compete.
Right.
And so that is the way he looked at it, as in it didn't matter whether or not he had been knocked down, had stiffened up, his legs were shaking and everything, to where his opponent seriously thought the fight was over. Probably had hoped the fight was over, but then he's allowed to stand up. The ref brushes off his gloves and sends him out there to get hammered on some more. The boxing mindset is that you're honoring that guy's fighting spirit. MMA has more been we're here to protect the fighters. They've and I think that's, to his credit, I think that's something that Dana White and even Scott Coker and I think a lot of MMA promoters, they're going to let the fight go as far as they can, but they're always quick to mention they're there to protect the fighters from themselves. If that is the real mindset, I think that might be the one thing that makes MMA a little bit safer than boxing. Because quite honestly, saying, well, you've got to give him, you've got to honor him by allowing him to really go out there and get permanent brain damage. I mean, I don't know where that logic comes from, but that's really kind of what Roy Jones Jr. had said. You've got to honor him by letting him do that. No, in my opinion, you would honor him by, stopping him from hurting himself and allowing him to be, healthy enough to fight another day. Samer's right though. He is totally right when he says that in 20 years, we're probably going to know really how safe MMA is. Nobody really knows what is the effect of, and I'm certain, a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grapplers could probably tell this, but what is the effect of getting choked out, a bunch of times, to the point that you're unconscious? What is the long-term effect on that? Or is there one? We may find out that it's really negligible. But is there effect? Is there something that where getting choked unconscious so many different times, or being knocked out brutally by kicks so many different times? What is the long-term effect of that? It could be much worse than what anybody's really prepared for. We're going to find that out over 20 years. But that was a bad example though. That fight, because most boxing bouts don't end like that. That was a bad example. And that is an easy one to point to and say, hey, this is why MMA is more safe than boxing. Yeah, in that particular case, it is. But that fight, you could also consider that an anomaly. Might be a lot of refs out there that would have said, you know what, the minute he was stiffened up and his hands were above his head and he was kind of punching air while he was laying on his back, they would have stopped it. So
you're absolutely right. There was a fight a little ways back it was one of the Shane Mosley fights from last year, and there was a couple there where once the fighter looked out on his feet, they just stopped the fight. And I looked over and I said, boxing's really come a long way, because in the old you were out on your feet, they'd just let you keep going until you got knocked to the ground and you couldn't get up again. That's boxing for you. But the fact that that the refs were stepping in and stopping fights because they said, look, the fighter clearly can't continue, and the fact that he's even still standing is impressive. So I think that's why I was shocked when I saw this. I think, Sammy, you were about to say something.
No, just go on. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So the debate will continue, and there'll always be, the fans of one will want to defend their sport, even when it really doesn't need defending. I think, both have their limitations, both have the things that are great about it, and both have their unfortunates. But I think, the other thing about it is you're going to have this contingent of people that just don't want combat sports at all. I don't know if either one of you watch any of Michael Moore's movies, but I made myself sit through Capitalism, A Love Story, and right at the beginning of it, he's comparing the United States to the fall of the Roman Empire, and he goes from showing a clip of gladiators to showing an MMA clip where two guys knock each other out, and I'm like, boo hiss to you, jerk. But there's some news this week. Last week, we spent a lot of time talking about Feijao and Strikeforce and Scott Coker and just, how unfortunate things are, based on an interview that he gave where he just didn't know when what he was doing or when anyone was going to come back. And we talked about that at length, and I was really prepared to just kind of let the subject go for a while. And then I start looking for news on Monday, as I do, and I find out that they still don't have a venue for the next leg of the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix. Not only do they not have a venue, but I guess their idea to do it in Japan has since backfired. So they decided to throw the heavyweight Grand Prix fights off the April 9th card altogether. And in doing so, the April 9th card, which is possibly, sort of, maybe scheduled to take place in Oakland. We know it's definitely going to be in California. They think Oakland. We'll probably find out tomorrow or the next day, which is about norm for Strikeforce. But that's going to be headlined, theoretically, by Gilbert Melendez versus Kawajiri. They're also talking about Nick Diaz. He was either going to fight Tyrone Woodley or Paul Daly. Well, Paul Daly knocked the stuffings out of Yuya Shirai last night at the Bama fight, which if you haven't had an opportunity to see the fight online, is actually pretty good for what it was. So Paul Daly now, unless they've changed their mind, is now aiming for Nick Diaz. And I have to give credit to some of the 401 commenters. There was some pretty funny stuff about him not making weight. In Paul Daly's defense, Paul Daly did an interview after the fight, and apparently part of the not making weight was due to scheduling conflicts with the weigh-ins, and he couldn't get to the scale. And by the time he got there, I think he was like within. I want to say the way he explained it was he was close enough, but that had he got there on time and was able to condition accordingly, he'd have made weight. But he didn't, and he's like, well, I'm not making excuses for myself, but here's the litany of things that happened that why I didn't make weight, and so I suspect he won't have that problem on April 9th. One would assume, but regardless, so it's looking like Melendez, Kawajiri, Paul Daly versus Nick Diaz, and I think they're looking at maybe Musasi on that fight as well, and they're going to kick the Strikeforce heavyweight Grand Prix matches between Werdum and Overeem, and then Josh Barnett and
Brett Rogers.
Thank you, Brett Rogers. They're going to kick that off to June, where they're hoping to get Muhammad Lawal, good old King Mo there, has said that he's probably going to fight, and that's looking like it's going to happen in Dallas. Real quickly, guys, what do you make of all this? Go ahead, Scott. I'm going to let you start this one off.
I'll read a quote that I wrote last week. I'm going to pimp my article a little bit. Does it seem suspicious to anyone else that the next Strikeforce Grand Prix bouts still lack a venue, or that Scott Coker has mentioned they could happen in Japan where the fighters wouldn't be subjected to drug testing? Seems pretty convenient considering one participant is a known steroid abuser and another has a questionable physique. I mean, this is something that was mentioned when they first involved, Josh Barnett in this tournament, and I'm sure it was probably in the backs of a lot of people's minds when they saw that Alistair Overeem was going to be competing in the U.S. Even though he's previously competed in the U.S. against Brett Rogers and tested clean, but does it surprise anybody that these fights might happen in Japan where these guys aren't going to be don't have to worry about getting licensed.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was
it doesn't surprise me. I think it's a little short-sightedness on Scott Coker's part, and I'm sure it probably still points to the fact that they're scrambling. They're scrambling now because they're in panic mode because right now Fedor's no longer on the radar in this heavyweight Grand Prix. So maybe they're just having a tough time trying to put these fights together. I mean, I don't know. As far as booking their other champions, good. The Melendez-Kawajiri fight should be an excellent bout. I mean, Kawajiri just looked great on New Year's Eve against Josh Thompson. So, I mean, that's a very good fight. Nick Diaz, I'd love to see him fight Tyrone Woodley. I think that's a good fight. I think it might be a little too soon for Woodley. I mean, I don't know whether he's ready to, because, I'm sorry, Tyrone Woodley, while he's a good fighter, Nick Diaz is a massive step up in skill for him to, go ahead and face. Not saying it wouldn't be competitive, but, Diaz is he's a veteran. Now, Paul Daly, people would love to see Nick Diaz against Paul Daly. The trash talk alone be, worth the price of admission. And even though Paul Daly probably won't make weight to, actually have it be a title fight, it'll still be a good bout.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm looking forward to the card regardless of the fact that it's they're not going to have the heavyweight Grand Prix fights on there. I think that's frustrating because of the way this company operates. But you brought up a good point. As soon as they included Josh Barnett, and then they were non-committal on a date, and then like, well, we're going to try to do it in Japan. Look, I'm one of those people who thinks that Overeem doesn't use steroids, or at least is currently clean. So I don't think it would have been a problem testing him. But this is what I had said when we discussed this with the All the King's Men roundtable. I don't even understand what possessed them to put him in the tournament to begin with for that reason. Unless you were gonna, unless he had gotten his license in California, or you had a venue picked out that he was already ready to go in. This just screams Bush League. What was it you, Scott, who said last week they have like a crew of 13 people that works there, and and they can't get more staff. But even 13 monkeys could at least could have booked venues far enough in advance to make sure that the one guy that was maybe a little questionable would have at least been able to fight on that event. The fact that they can't get out of the first round, we're focusing on Fedor's loss, but to me that's not even the issue here. The issue is, why can't you have venues picked for the other fight? Or why include this guy to begin with? There was at least 5 other guys they could have replaced Josh Barnett with, and I think that's the frustrating thing for me here. So while the possibility of Roger Gracie versus Gegard Mousasi, Nick Diaz versus Paul Daly, which I'm really excited for because I like Paul Daly and I think he got screwed by the whole Koscheck fight thing, though he punched him in the back of the head, and seeing Gilbert Melendez on TV again, another situation where they don't book their champions in fights. I think that's great. I think I think the April 9th card is going to be a game one to watch. It doesn't negate the fact that this is a company who seems to just fail at any kind of long-term thinking and doesn't even seem to think about the repercussions of their lack of action. Samer, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. As you guys said, the April 9th card, as it stands right now, is a great card. I don't want to repeat everything you guys said, but Gegard Mousasi, Roger Gracie, great fight. Kawajiri, Melendez, excellent fight, and Daly Diaz. Well, you can't go wrong with that one. I mean, if it's a boring fight, then I might as well stop watching MMA. But the thing is, one of the things that's so wrong with this is that, especially since they've acquired Fedor's services, Strikeforce has prided themselves on the fact that they have the best heavyweight division in the world. Now, that's debatable. I don't actually agree with it, but they have a solid heavyweight division. It's at least comparable to the UFC one. And you put the heavyweight Grand Prix. Pat Miletich says it's the most important event in North American MMA history, which is, a load of crap or whatever. You need to make it work. When people are, at least hardcore MMA fans, are dying to watch Alistair Overeem fight. I'm dying to watch him fight relevant opposition. Overeem Verdum, it's really, if there's a fight in Strikeforce I want to see right now, it's Overeem against Verdum. Overeem is your heavyweight champion. You pride yourself on your heavyweight division. Make him fight. How often has he fought for the promotion? Once against Paul Bontello, once against Brett Rogers. That was it. I'm sure he'd fight this year. It's not his fault. He wanted to fight against Verdum, but you got to make this happen. I mean, the problem isn't Overeem. The problem is Josh Barnett. I think Josh Barnett is a great fighter. I think he's one of the better heavyweights out there. He's very talented. I think he'd walk all over Brett Rogers, but if you were aware, and they certainly were, of his situation with the athletic commissions and the license, why put him there in the first place? Sure, he makes the Grand Prix better. He provides star power. He's a quality heavyweight. But would people really have cried if Josh Barnett wasn't there and was replaced by, Shane De Rosario, Daniel Cormier? I don't think so. I mean, just ditch him altogether. Put somebody else. Is he really worth putting the whole Grand Prix, I don't want to say in jeopardy, but on hold, just so that you find a place where he can fight? I don't think so. Is he worth a trip to Japan alone? I don't think so. So it's really unfortunate. And I mean, because really, if you think about it, what reason is there for the heavyweight fights being pulled off the April 9th card? Nothing, except for the fact that Josh Barnett, they can't make him fight there. And that's unfortunate. I mean, people, honestly, the card as it stands is great, but if you ask everybody what's the fight they were looking forward to the most, they would have said Overeem and Verdum. he's their heavyweight champion. He's exciting. People want to see him fight. And now it's not like we're going to have to wait 2 weeks, a month. We're going to have to wait till June, and then who knows what happens there. What if somebody gets injured? What if he gets injured? What if Radulich gets injured? So it's really unfortunate. And it's just another example as to why I, along with Scott and others, were pessimistic when the Grand Prix was first announced. I'm sure it will happen. I'm sure they're going to finish it. But for Coker to get out and say they're going to finish it this year is a load of crap. That's never happening. They're not going to finish it this year.
There were so many ways they could have gone with this tournament. I mean, I was never a fan of putting Overeem in it to begin with because I felt like he's your champion. You know, he's already proven, you know, he's the best in your promotion. So if this is just for bragging rights, what is the point of having your belt then? So I was never a fan of putting him in there, and I'm always, you know, again, I'm always thinking in terms of long-term, you know, strategic booking. And my thing was, if there was another way to do this, and I know some of the people that come onto our site not a fan of the fantasy booking, but there were 2 spots they could have used to promote up-and-coming fighters in this. Overeem spot and Josh Barnett. And if they really wanted to have, you know, while this tournament was going on, if they wanted to do a fight in Japan, that was the fight they should have done. You know, that's the fight they should have been working on. That's the fight they should have promoted. They should have had Josh Barnett versus Overeem while this tournament was happening in Japan, and just do it and see, you know, and see what happens. And, you know, God willing, Overeem beats Josh Barnett, no harm, no foul. In the meantime, you stick 2 other guys into the heavyweight tournament. You put in a Dan Cormier or Shane Del Rosario, or, you know, maybe you offer Bobby Lashley, an opportunity to redeem himself in the tournament. Maybe you get Batista in there, or, you know, here's an odd choice, Chad Griggs. There were options there. This was an opportunity to build somebody up, but it's like they don't ever really think about that. It's one of the things that I'm noticing about the Strikeforce management mentality is that they don't think in terms of build up new guys. They seem to think only in terms of market the guys with the names and, you know, only, and they don't think, and that's as far as it ever seems to go. And it's a little frustrating as a fan. I'll let you guys touch on that, and then we are going to close out the show. Scott, if you go ahead if you want.
I mean, I agree with you. We've covered this, you know, when it comes to their Challenger Series and all that, about how they will, you know, the only 2 guys that they really promote, Feijao and Dan Henderson. I mean, we've seen that, you know, and those guys are already huge stars, and so while it's good to note that they're going to be on the card, I mean, I don't think they really need to try to be making the bigger stars. I mean, they don't need to, and you know, it's just, you know, and you ask yourself, is it the fact that Strikeforce isn't even there yet? You know, is it possible that as a number 2, you know, is it possible that even, you know, this is really the best that this promotion's ever going to get? You know, you have to kind of ask yourself that. Have they reached their peak? Is, you know, for as great an idea as their, you know, heavyweight Grand Prix is, you know, was it a great idea, but it's really just going to get pulled off kind of half-assed by a second-rate company? That might be the reality. You know, I mean, we might be watching them do the best that they can, you know, and hoping for anything else is, you know, we're hoping beyond hope. I mean, there is that possibility. This, you know, maybe the fact that the UFC always kind of gets things to come together is really just a testament to the fact that they've got a lot of great people working on it and just have a much bigger budget to do so. So, I mean, I don't know. We might not ever see, you know, maybe it's always going to be, you know, Strikeforce is just going to kind of be a mild disappointment, you know, with a couple of highs and, you know, a couple of lows, and that's it.
Yeah, it's sort of becoming the equivalent of all the regional promotions that show up on HDNet, which oddly enough seem to be run better. You know, the fact that Shark Fights got themselves on HDNet and is able, you know, and has been able to put on, you know, now 2, you know, televised shows. You know, they are building themselves up. MFC, the Titan Fighting just got Bobby Lashley and Phil Baroni, and it's like, so your choices are essentially this cavalcade of regional promotions that are, you know, semi-professional and actually starting to look good and gives you an alternative to the UFC, and then the circus called Strikeforce, and that is sad.
But it's a different mindset though, and I think it's a different business set, and I think it's, you know, Strikeforce used to be very good at this. You know, when they first started doing their MMA shows, I believe it was in 2007, they had very good, you know, solid fighters, guys that weren't prima prima donnas. They, but they put on great fights, really good events, But once they decided, well, we're going to get into the business of getting, the Overeem, actually, quite honestly, when he first got the title, he wasn't a prima donna. But when they got the Fedor, when they decided they were going to go for Barnett, I think at that point now, they've lost a lot of the control, to do what they want to do.
Yeah,
and
they definitely need a marketing.
Can do it.
They definitely need a marketing consultant to work with them, because it seems like it's a lot of guys that are very, very familiar with the MMA business and know how to make fights, but they don't. But they're not a promotion. They don't have a guy that does promoting and marketing, and that seems to be what they're lacking. They certainly don't have somebody who does long-term planning. That's for certain. Samir, do you have anything you want to add to this, or because if not, then we're going to wrap and just talk about what's coming up next this week on 401 and on MMA, in the world of MMA.
Yeah, real quick. One last thing to wrap this up. As Scott said, Strikeforce was doing fine before Elite XC folded and before they signed the deal with CBS. That's when they started biting off bigger than they can chew. Scott Coker was happy putting on decent shows with good fighters before that, and I think that should have been the mindset still. Even though they signed these big guys, I mean, props to them. I'm not sure if Dan Henderson was worth all the money. I don't think he's nearly the draw they think he is, but he's a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but just in terms of garnering interest. But even with all these stars, even with the heavyweight Grand Prix, they should have kept their feet on the ground. Is a trip to Japan really necessary? I don't think so. All these shenanigans and all these problems they're in, they're they're exclusively the ones to blame, along with Showtime. And Showtime is to blame for many things, but these things like choosing venues and going to Japan and picking Josh Barnett to be in the tournament, that's just Strikeforce's fault. And that's unfortunate, but it doesn't look promising. I don't see it changing anytime soon, too.
No. So the MFC, speaking of promotions that are actually doing pretty well, it was a fun show. I don't think too many people, judging by the interest on 401, tuned in for it. But it was a interesting show. It seemed to move pretty well. The main event between Dwayne Lewis and Ryan Jimmo, shorter than I think I had expected it to be, but well, it was a fun show. I'm looking forward to the next one. HDNet, I believe, in March, that's the Bobby Lashley fight, and Phil Baroni's going to be making his first appearance for Titan Fighting Championship 17. I believe that is March 25th. But this week in MMA, we've got this Thursday. It's going to be a busy week for me, I'll tell you. I actually have work trips and everything else, not to mention 2 fights to cover. So we got UFC on versus 3, Sanchez versus Catman, and that's going to be Thursday night. 401 will be doing live coverage. I will be doing that for the site. And it's going to be headlined, as we said, by Martin Catman versus Diego Sanchez, CB Dalloway versus Mark Munoz, Alessio Sakara versus Chris Weidman, and Brian Bowles versus Demisio Page. On the preliminary card, Danny Castillo versus Joe Daddy Stevenson, Cyril Diabate versus Steve Cantwell, Shane Rolla versus Tiago Tavares, Ruben Duran versus Takeya Mizugaki, Rob Kimmons versus Dong Yang, Dave Branch versus Ruzumar Palhares, and Todd Brown versus Igor. I know you pronounced that not the way you'd say it, but good. What was
Pekrayak.
It? Thank you, Pekrayak. So, your 50 words or less assessment of this card, Scott. What do you think? What's there to look forward to here?
I think the Sanchez versus Campman bout's going to tell us a lot about both of those guys. I'm actually really looking forward to that. Nothing else on the main card really stands out at me, which is a little unfortunate. I've never been a massive CB Dalloway fan. I think he's probably one of the I think he walked into the Ultimate Fighter a little bit overrated, and I think he's been somewhat exposed. So I really see Mark Munoz probably taking that. It'll be good to see if Joe Stevenson can get back on the winning track, because I think that's going to be important for him. If he hopes to stay employed in the UFC. Thiago Tavares, of course, is going to want to get another win, and certainly so will Paul Harris. There's a bunch of guys on this card that are going to need to win and win impressively in order to stay employed by the UFC.
Is Mizugaki one of those guys? Do you think his loss to Uriah Faber seriously sunk his stock, or it was just a minor stumble and he doesn't necessarily have to play to keep getting paid in this fight?
I think he'll need to win. And I think he's going to need to look good. But when you lose to Uriah, I don't know. That's kind of Uriah's considered a top guy, so losing to him really isn't it's not something that a lot of guys can that you need to be hanging your head on. I think when you lose to somebody like Uriah, I think when you lose to Jose Aldo, anybody that's considered top talent, I don't think they get you your walking papers.
Fair. Samer?
Yeah. I think I'm mostly interested in the preliminary card. The Mizugaki fight, you mentioned that. I think he'll destroy Ruben Duran. I don't think they'll give him the pink slip even if he were to lose, because I think the division in which he's in is not that deep. They don't have many top guys. Mizugaki got the exposure against Torres in his fight. He got exposure against Faber. So he's kind of a recognizable name for the guys who followed the WEC. So I think he'll be safe. There aren't too many guys in that division anyway, so I'm not sure they can afford to just release guys left and right. I think the Tavares fight will be very interesting. I'm interested in seeing Brian Bowles back. He hasn't fought in a while. The main event is great. I think Cameron wins this one unless Sanchez can really initiate scrambles and improve his striking. The rest of the main card is kind of weak. CB Holloway, Mark Munoz, good fight, but nothing spectacular. And I'm always down for watching Rousimar Palhares fight, especially if he kind of breaks somebody's leg or something again.
I'm looking for Martin Kamen to redeem himself, and it's not that his fight with Jake Shields was terrible or anything. It was there's a lot going on in that fight. It was just one of those ones where it just left a bad taste in people's mouths. So win, lose, or draw against Diego Sanchez, I'm looking for him to put on an entertaining main event fight, worthy of being considered a main event. That's what I'm looking for here. And same thing with Diego Sanchez. For the guy that calls himself the Nightmare, I want to see him come out there and really give people their money's worth. And that's what I'm hoping that comes out of this fight.
Not called the Nightmare anymore, though, Mark.
Yeah, he did retire that name, didn't he?
Yeah, now he's the Dream.
He's the Dream now.
No, I see. Did he have some sort of conversion?
Well, he said that he was the Nightmare. He was the Nightmare to himself because, through some of the success and some of the highs and lows, he would shirk his training and he would go out drinking with his friends and stuff like that. And so, now that he's pretty much resolved himself to just really being a dedicated fighter, more so dedicated, I guess, that that's all that's behind him, and that was the Nightmare. So now he is just going to be Diego Sanchez. I don't know where the Dream came from because I never heard that out of his mouth, but UFC has started saying it, and I think it's terrible. Diego Sanchez works fine. Everybody knows who that is. He doesn't need a nickname. But
yeah, some of these guys, they could do with less nicknames considering some of the ones they come up with.
Yeah.
Maybe he should have called himself Diego Pitbull Sanchez. We know there aren't many of those. It's only there's only 11 or 12 guys in MMA with the nickname Pitbull. That would have been quite original.
Well, I wouldn't have minded him something unique like the Spider. That's it. I don't think that one's used or Diego Rush Sanchez. I like that. There's something to that. I don't know.
I actually, maybe he should have called himself the Chez. Wah, wah, wah. So from UFC, now Saturday night's going to be an interesting night because Bellator was on Thursday nights. It was on Fox Sports, and then they would replay it. I believe it was on CBS or NBC. They would replay it on NBC on Sundays. And when it was on Thursdays, it was a lot easier to follow, and so you kind of had that nice progression of Bellator on Thursdays, and then there was something on Fridays, and then there would be the UFC or Strikeforce on Saturdays, and it was just fantastic. And then they moved Bellator from Fox Sports to MTV2, and now Bellator is going to be on Saturday nights. Screwed everything, We can't get enough coverage for this thing, whatever. The nice people from MTV2 and Bjorn Rebney have said that Bellator fights, they're going to try on the nights that the Saturday's UFC, they're going to try to air them earlier in the evening so that there's no conflict between Bellator and the pay-per-view. The problem with that is that it's going to conflict with what are preliminaries that are shown. So no matter what, you're going to be switching channels or not. Something's not going to get watched. And this is already starting. Now, they made specific mention of the UFC. They don't seem to give two hoots about Strikeforce. That being said, so you've got Bellator 35, same night as Cavalcante versus Hendo. So we'll talk about Bellator 35 first. And that's coming at you live from the Tachi Palace Hotel and Casino, which just had Tachi Palace fights not too long ago. So the main card is the quarterfinals of the welterweight tournament, and that's Lyman Good versus Chris Lozano, Dan Hornbuckle, which has got just one of the greatest names in MMA I've ever heard, versus Brent Weidman, Jay Heron versus Anthony Lapsley, Rick Hahn versus Jim Wallhead. And on the prelims card, you've got their champion in Zoila Frosto versus Karina Halanan, but that's a non-title fight. I don't understand why they do stuff like that. Jamie Jara versus Joaquin Spiritwolf. Hopefully someone won't get poked in the eye. Brandon Bender versus Josh Herrick. And Jesus Castro versus Paul Ruiz. So, 50 words or less. Scott, why do we care? Why is this card worth watching?
You know what I think is awesome before I even say that? I've been following MMA for a little while, and we have finally gotten to the point now where we're almost complaining that there's too much MMA on TV. Mm-hmm. That is awesome. That is awesome because it used to be I used to have to set my DVR until at 2 in the morning to catch the Strikeforce show that was shown on, I think, CBS, where they showed old Strikeforce shows, just so I could watch some regular MMA. Awesome. Now we're to the point that we got to pick and choose. We're multitasking our DVRs and trying to get online and stuff like that. As far as this card, I got to be honest with you. I don't follow a lot of Bellator, and that's bad on me. I'm a big Dan Hornbuckle fan. It's good to see him act. I'm interested in to see how Jay Heron goes in the in his Bellator debut, but I really don't follow enough Bellator to get all jazzed up over their cards. I'm fans of some of their fighters, but quite honestly, I just between Strikeforce and MFC and pretty much everything else that I get on HDNet, I have trouble following Bellator, and that's my bad.
It's fair enough. Samer?
Yeah, I like the card. I think the welterweight Grand Prix is interesting. Jay Heron hasn't fought in a while, so it will be interesting seeing what kind of form he's in, because I think if he's on point, he's the favorite to win the tournament. And I think he'd make for the most interesting opponent for Ben Askren, who's their welterweight champion. I mean, Askren has already beaten Hornbuckle and Lyman Good anyway. And Heron is a good defensive wrestler. He might give Askren some trouble. So as long as he performs well, I expect him to win the tournament. And even if he doesn't, I mean, Jay Heron versus Dan Hornbuckle is one of the, if they were to fight, is one of the most interesting welterweight battles outside of the UFC. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting card overall, and I like the Grand Prix, the tournament, whatever the hell they're calling it.
Any dark horses in this? Anyone that, this might make him a star? If they were to pull it off?
Right. Well, Lyman Good has had his breakthrough, I think, by winning the previous tournament, but I think he has more to offer. I think the best is yet to come for Good, and I don't think people realize how I want to say good he is, but the pun is too obvious. But yeah, he can be really good. He can be better than he is, and I'm interested in seeing how he performs. And he hasn't fought. He didn't fight in a while before his fight with Askren, and he put up a good fight. I thought it was competitive, so it will be interesting to see if he'd made any adjustments. And I think Lyman Good can be one of a welterweight that we might see in the UFC down the road, as well as Dan Hornbuckle, of course, but we know he's that good already.
Yep, I'll be interesting to see if any of the prelim fights actually make it to air. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing Zoila Frosto fight again. I'm looking forward to seeing Joaquin Spiritwolf, oddly enough. And I really became a fan of Bellator last season. I, too, enjoy the tournament format. I think my only complaint about Bellator, and if we ever are able to get somebody on the show that fights for them, and probably one of my first questions is, do they keep you busy enough? With 2 seasons a year, and and they're breaking things down into tournaments. I just wonder, are these guys getting enough fights from them? So I guess we'll see. The other event, and this one I'll be covering for 411, is Strikeforce Feijao versus Henderson, coming at you from Ohio. And it's going to be the light heavyweight championship between Dan Henderson and Rafael Cavalcante. You've got Liz Carmouche, who's stepping in for Maisha Tate, who's joined the injured list, fighting new champ Marlos Conan. Tim Kennedy, Mr. America himself, Tim Kennedy versus Melvin Manhoff, and Billy Evangelista versus Jorge Masvidal. I'm not going to go through the prelim card because those fights never make it to air, but which is really unfortunate. Somebody else has mentioned that too, that they don't understand why if the show ends early they just don't show prelims. But and this apparently isn't an important enough fight for HDNet to get involved with showing the prelim card, so fully on them. But my question for this is simply, if Dan Henderson doesn't win here, is this it for Dan Henderson? Is Dan Henderson going to have to start looking at what else can I do, or do you think Dan Henderson has just so much more to offer the world of MMA, even at this late stage in his game? Sam, I'll throw that one to you.
Well, he's definitely in the tail end of his career. There's no doubt about that. He's still in good enough shape. He's got a great chin, so you won't see him getting knocked out left and right. He's never been knocked out anyway. The fight is competitive. Even if he were to lose, I don't think he's going to be thoroughly dominated the way he was against Jake Shields, with the exception of that first round. But I think they'll find him extra fights, Strikeforce. And Henderson has the luxury of being a middleweight / light heavyweight, so he can fight at both weights. So maybe, would people complain if he were to be paired up with, let's say he lost and he was paired up with the loser of Mousasi and Roger Gracie? I think that's a good fight. Even at middleweight, there are plenty of decent middleweights in Strikeforce. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, but let's say Dan Henderson against Kung Lee. Not saying it's a realistic fight, but they can find opponents for him. I think he has a chance of winning. I favor Feijao in a 5-rounder, but even if he loses, I don't think it's going to be the last of Dan Henderson, although it's certainly going to be one of Henderson's final fights as a relevant and top-ranked fighter in whatever division he chooses to compete in.
Scott, do you think he wins this one? Do you think Dan Henderson shocks the world and captures the light heavyweight title for Strikeforce?
I don't know if it would be a massive shock to the world. It's a very tough fight to call because it's very tough to gauge which how good Henderson's going to be when he comes in. A lot of people picked him to just steamroll over Jake Shields, and we didn't see that happening. And so where is Dan Henderson at this point in his career? I mean, like Samer said, he's obviously on the downside of his career. He's got to be seeing the end of things now. He's said in interviews that he has no intention of retiring, but I don't know. Does a loss here maybe push him towards the door? Might he consider it then? You have to think that it's going to at least weigh heavily on his mind. I think Cavalcante, I believe, didn't he is a Black House guy, isn't he? I think he trains with the Nogueiras, and I think he's also a training partner of Anderson Silva. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. Well, I mean, you gotta figure he's going to be going in with somewhat the same mindset and the same game plan that they have seen work against Henderson before. Cavalcante looked really good against Mo Lawal, and while Lawal and Henderson are different, wrestlers. The fact that he was able to look as good as he did against Lawal and able to rock him, I think they're going to be looking to do that against Henderson. I think they're going to be trying to employ that same game plan of keeping it where Cavalcante's, where Feijao is comfortable and, which is, I'm guessing is going to be on the feet and probably in the clinch and stuff like that. Can Henderson win? Absolutely. I mean, I think Henderson can really win just about against everybody. Well, will he though in this fight? Yeah, I got to go with Feijao. I think we're seeing right now Feijao come into his own, and I don't know that he would be as good in the UFC, but I think during his time on Strikeforce now, we are going to see, I think we're going to see Feijao hopefully come into his own. I mean, I'd like to see that.
All right. Last question on this, and then that'll end this edition of the 401 Ground and Pound radio show. Liz Carmouche, she's replacing Maisha Tate. Marloes Cohn, she's a brand new champion. She just beat Sarah Kaufman a few months back. This is her first title defense. Competitive matchup or thrown together sloppy mess?
I think it's
thrown together sloppy mess.
No, I actually disagree. I think it's going to be competitive. I don't think she'll win because Kuna is just such a better grappler than she is, but and even a better striker. So it's kind of not a very good matchup for her, but I think she'll make a fight out of it. I mean, the thing we have to realize is that
Pediatric Associates isn't just a doctor's office. It's a tradition. My mom brought me here when I was a kid, and now I'm bringing my daughter here.
It seems like these days doctor's offices are popping up everywhere, and then they're gone just as fast as they arrived. That's not for me. I need to know my doctor will be there for my kids, today, tomorrow, and years from now.
Since 1955, Pediatric Associates has been here when you need us, with convenient locations near you. Just visit us at pediatricassociates.com.
If you want your windows there in weeks, pick up the phone and just text Reese.
Congratulations to our 2023 giveaway winner, Andy from Naples. Tell us when you found out you won $15,000 in windows from Reese.
Well, I had received the text message saying I won while teaching my 5th graders. Initially, I wanted to scream and shout from the excitement, but I held it together.
Now it's your turn to win. Just text the word HAPPY to 20129. That's HAPPY to 20129.
Thank you, Reese Windows.